Welcome everyone to our June 15th TDAP meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And with that, we are looking at item number 2, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest, which is for many conflict of interest. So if anybody has anything to declare at this point, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of the previous minutes. So if everyone can, these were circulated earlier, and if you can take a moment and review them if you have not, we are looking for a motion to approve the May 18th minutes. Do you have any extra copies of the agenda?
So that's all I have printed. I can print if you want. I have my laptop here, so if you want to.
Yeah, I don't maybe you can share printer at my house. I can look on my phone. It's easy. I mean, share with you on my phone.
If there's one that we can, I just wanted something to collect, like we don't need to.
I got like 17 copies of this agenda on my phone. I
Whenever someone's ready to move, Jerry, seconded by Christine Carey, which, yeah, stakeholder approval, but looking for a TDAP. Thank you, Christine, I appreciate it. Just looking for a seconder at this point, someone who is at the meeting. Seconded by Michael, very good. This is the motion that the May 18, 2022 Tourism Active Advisory Board minutes are approved as presented. We have a mover and seconder. All in favor? Aye. Carried. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Number 4, presentations. I don't believe we have any presentations today.
No presentation.
Yeah, we've this committee has been involved in some heavy lifting over the past couple of months, so we can scoot forward to number 5, deputations, which I believe we do not have any at this time. Very good. Seeing none, item number 6, general business and reports, 6.1. So this will be the discussion of the work plan updates. So if you can bring that, share the screen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just share my screen. You can see the agenda. Can everybody confirm they can see the screen? Awesome. So this is our draft work plan, which we've been working on over the last few months, Madam Chair. And this is just a good opportunity for the board to review it once again. This is a good touch point to make any amendments, to change things. As you can see, we've made some great progress over the last few months on various projects that we've been working on. And this is a good touch point. So I'm happy to answer any questions, to receive any amendments, and for asking any status updates.
I can provide an update on Project Microphone. It did go CIC yesterday. The recommendation to push forward with a 2013 launch of Project Microphone. So council and committee did approve that. It still has to be ratified by council next week, but that is very positive. And so if that does get ratified next week, the next step is we will start forming a committee right away to start planning, booking, and figuring out the bundling and all of that right away.
Would that be us, or would that be someone?
Another committee.
Yeah.
We could certainly have a representative from TDAP to have that connection, but it would be basically folks that know how to do that. So they kind of do live entertainment, yeah.
And Zvi, just a question. I realized there was some discussion regarding the budget next year. So can you provide just a refresher on what that would look like if that is moved to 2023?
right? So yesterday in the staff report, we chose to not ask for the dollars to be rolled forward. What we said was, we don't know what it will look like. We want the committee to meet, discuss, figure out if the model makes sense. Do we need a model that allows private sector partnerships, yada, yada. And then we would come back to council as part of the budget process in probably October, November with what's called a council approved initiative amendment. So we already have the dollars.
Yeah.
We would just ask for the dollars from 2022 to be rolled over into 2023, the unspent ones. I think some of the money will be spent this year because we'll use it to book acts, right? We'll, or like deposits and stuff like that.
So does that discussion about private, sorry, don't remember the right word, but being able to use a non-profit,
Yeah,
it like, does that change that problem that you're running into if you can get approval for that?
yeah, so the only way we can work with private is if it becomes a Norfolk event. If we hire somebody to do the show and it's our show, then we're procuring, that's fine. What we always can't do is sponsor a private. So I can't go to a private event organizer and say, here's $20,000 to make your event better.
Okay, so it's what we spoke about last time,
Yeah.
that issue,
Mhm.
whatever this discussion you have with council, or whoever makes that decision next time about being able to use.
It'll be the committee. So
Okay,
basically,
so that committee
Yeah.
would allow you to change the way you approach the whole thing.
It'll give us a model.
Okay,
And I know the rules, and within the rules of the municipal act, we can come up with a model that makes sense, given the amount of money that we have, given, all the parameters. We partner with just any non-for-profits, it could be we partner with any non-for-profits, right, BIAs, et cetera. It could be that we do our own events, in which case we can do an RFP, or it could be something else where another non-for-profit partners with a private, and I would have to figure out what our role can and can't be in that case.
Are you able to write things like, just like a question, like say somebody throws like a big festival, are you able to write things like transportation?
Yeah, I think
Is that kind of like-
transportation,
Like those kind of things, are they like
it.
gray area kind of things?
Totally
or-
gray, because
Yeah.
the municipal act says basically, council shall provide no grant except for in the case of non-for-profits.
Mhm.
And the way it's usually interpreted is, as long as you're doing something that benefits all businesses, it's okay, if it benefits one or more. So Shop Norfolk obviously benefits businesses, but any business can participate.
Mhm.
If I did Shop Norfolk with just 5 businesses, that would be bonusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really not well defined
Yeah.
at all, it's very kind of up to interpretation.
But like you can't be, I'm sponsoring your event for $10,000, that's clearly like, no.
That's clearly.
But
yeah.
saying I'm gonna provide transportation so everyone in Norfolk can get to and from, Simcoe or Dover on this day, that would be great.
I think that would be great,
Okay.
yeah. I think, what if somebody did a private event and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna jump on your private event and I wanna bring in another performer. I will pay for that performer, I will kind of handle those costs, but it'll be part of your event, as long as it doesn't change the cost of the ticket. So that one event organizer that's private doesn't get the benefit of that, other than it's a bigger show.
Mhm.
And I think we could do that kind of thing. But
Okay.
all of it is like very, very.
Yeah. It's,
You know.
yeah,
I'm understanding the spirit of shade.
The spirit is this, in America, when a municipality is trying to attract a business, they offer them dollars. You can have a free building, or come here and we'll give you, $20,000, or we'll give you $1 million or whatever. Here in Canada, they specifically wanted to prevent municipalities from competing with each other using public tax dollars.
and that's good for us as a small municipality.
Absolutely.
We couldn't compete otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's been legal weigh-in and they are determining how you can navigate this
Yeah.
diverse partnership opportunity in
Yeah.
next year. Yeah,
We
very
had
complex.
some analysis done and a memo written for us, which
Yeah,
answers some questions, but most certainly not all of them.
yeah.
So, but we'll see where the committee wants to land. So that's the next
Okay.
key piece, like where does the committee want to take this?
Very good, thank you. Christine?
A question on the development alliances and partnerships with stakeholders. arrange a presentation from Mr. John regarding Turkey Point rebranding. Is there any?
That was me, upon following up with Johnny. There's no current update I can give. I think it has to go back to the advisory board or whatever the board is.
Turkey Point?
Yes.
The property, property owners
Yeah.
association?
Do you recommend, Michael, that that stays on the agenda or should it be removed?
I would likely remove it until.
Okay, because I know it's been on the agenda for about 3 to 4 months, right?
An update, but
Okay. Any further discussion on the removal of that item? Okay. Very good. We have had, I think, invite a senior order of government official to speak at the meeting. I think no doubt the election has just taken place. Is that something of interest that perhaps we want to extend an invitation to our new MPP?
I'd love to, I know her.
Yeah,
What do you think?
absolutely.
Yeah. What next meeting are we having?
So through you, Madam Chair, to the board, I'd be happy to arrange that through my office at the clerk's office. If it's my understanding that we'd like our new MPP through the most recent election, which is Bobby and Brady, I believe.
Yeah.
And we'll be contacting her and I'll see if she can come to our July meeting. That sound good to the board? Good.
Would it go Linda, neighbor? It's like cool having somebody represent county that.
Would it be worthwhile to maybe give her some information ahead of time so she can get briefed a little bit about what's going on here before she comes in? Absolutely fine. I mean, we could do it and just here it is, or we can kind of give her a heads up.
That's a good point.
Certainly share the mandate of the committee and
Just at least at the
Yeah.
minimum, so she knows, okay, who am I meeting with and what do they do? And
absolutely, and maybe you can CC myself and Michelle.
We're deciding that.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, if it's a Wednesday like normal, some Wednesdays most Wednesdays are free, if you guys want to host it at Cranberry Creek, just in case.
And that certainly is an option. Do you have an opportunity for live feed?
Yeah, we could, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get that set up, no problem. It's totally fine if you don't want to. I know we just used to try and like kind of get out of the office for meetings. So if you're interested, like we could, I can just pull up my computer and do a live meeting. No problem.
So
So
you
I've
can
done my
explore
meetings,
that,
I've been that person on the meeting at Cranberry Creek before, so I'm sure it works the other way. So, yeah, if you want to, you're more than welcome to Cranberry Creek next, that's depending on.
So through you, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to arrange and I'll make sure that the member of parliament has the background information and I'll have a conversation with her beforehand and I'll look at some details. I'm also going to discuss later on during our terms of reference reviews for the next section of this board, what it looked like over the summer. That's coming up later on, but that will definitely all be discussed and pretty kindly offer that. So,
Great, excellent. Any other comments regarding the work plan?
So we're good.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Chris. Floor is yours.
Yeah, so half of the question I have is already answered in terms of exactly what she's coming to do. But I remember from AAB, we wanted to engage with the MPP, at the time it was Tony Barrett, and we were told specifically that we are a advisory board of council, and we should not be engaging with them unless council is aware and approves. So I know that Aaron is in clerk, so he can always ensure that they know, but I know that for sure in the past they had said there is absolutely no way that we should be engaging or with the MPs, without council knowing and sanctioning it.
Okay, so,
So,
yes.
through you, Madam Chair, through you to Chris,
yes.
absolutely, this would mostly be more of just a fact-finding mission and information piece. As per the terms of reference, it says it's for a regular basis to keep abreast of senior government policies and programs as affected by tourism NECDO.
You're so well versed in that
So
This is like a reading from the piece of paper.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm reading off the screen. So it's mostly about just sort of an update that way. We will ensure that council is always aware of what's going on, and I'll make sure senior management is also cognizant of decisions making. But that will definitely, that's good to be aware of though.
Because that note in the work plan is actually referenced within the terms, isn't it? So absolutely, we'll ensure that we follow that protocol, Chris, and notify council and work within that.
And just so members know the process, these minutes following this meeting go to council for ratification, which is actually occurring next week, on Tuesday. So perhaps just to be totally open and transparent, we'll pass it for all motions when we're done with the discussion. First to amend it to remove the turkey point piece. Also a motion to invite a member of parliament, and that way council will ratify it and will be fully aware of this act going on. If there are any concerns, staff will take that forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's really, while we have the MPPs on the invite list, does it make sense to have the MP on the invite list?
Eventually.
Okay.
I mean, so, both at the same time.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
No, Wednesday, same day, okay, just that's me. And it is the government, senior government.
Well, and
It's
it's,
not-
you know what, and I think it's because it's a new appointment, right?
Yes. Okay, fair enough.
That's why, yeah, and I think that was why it was rotated onto the agenda, was we were monitoring the election. We thought maybe there is an outcome item that we need to build a bridge to, right? Because I think there is a platform, and it would be interesting to know how the MPP will advocate on the behalf of our municipality.
Independently, of course.
Independently, yeah, so you might have some good questions.
Absolutely.
So if there is there any other discussion regarding the work plan? Because we do have a couple of motions we should bring forward. Christine,
I'm sorry,
discussion?
I'm sorry.
That's what you hear, Bart.
No,
I'm sorry, and I take my responsibility as someone's person. In that area, develop alliances and partnerships with stakeholders, I turkey point was one you mentioned. Were there other ones that were on that list that we're looking at doing that just, you pick this one and moving it aside, or were there other alliances and partnerships that we're looking to develop?
I can tell you that was the only active item at this point, unless the committee members would like to make a recommendation if they're aware of any other activity within the municipality
I think,
and want to make a recommendation.
like,
Michelle?
what's his name? Forgetting his name, I know really well on the board in Delphi with him. The chair of the.
Jim Norman?
Jim Norman would be, I think, an interesting person to come talk to us, like at some point, to give an update about Delhi as much as he can. I know a lot of it's a little bit kind of secretive, but there's a lot going on in Delhi, and I think that it's like a really good, he's a really good person to kind of champion the revitalization of a city that was pretty dormant for a really long time. He might be a really cool person to invite to talk to us at some point, and I can guarantee you would be interested. It's all about sharing knowledge, so.
Great recommendation. How does everyone feel about that? We
Absolutely.
should proceed and add that, Aaron?
I'm sorry, I was just drafting a motion there. So we found a crack in
To make Jim Norman from the Delhi Chamber or Delhi, yeah. Always
It's
get
a
it mixed
chamber.
up. I always get it mixed up.
Chamber, that's right.
Chamber of Commerce, to just give updates on the project they're working on, because they have a lot on the go.
Excellent. So I was just testing you there.
Yes,
I want to see-
and I failed.
I want to see the members craft the motion, see?
Yes. My uncertain response to which board I'm on, like.
Okay. So now we have 3 motions at this point that we'll proceed with. Let's see if there's any other discussion. Are we going for 4 motions today?
I would just really quickly chat about, I'd really like to try and like pick someone like Jim or somebody that like represents a different community in Norfolk to just come tell us what's going on in the community. I think every meeting, I think if we, unless we have too much in a meeting, I think that might be like a just kind of good to keep abreast on what's going on in the different larger communities in Norfolk. And, you know, it won't take much time and they're always really eager to share for support and for, you know, just might keep us kind of more abreast of the higher level things that are going on that we might not know about.
Maybe it's a matter of identifying those folks like Jim. And maybe part of the correspondence for these meetings is we are meeting. We're like to provide something, even if it's just a written report, and we look at it and want to get more clarity, and we can invite them to subsequent, but at least of all, we have a mechanism in place on a regularized basis to control.
It's a great idea.
That for the Delegate Chamber or Dover Board of Trade, any of those types of organizations, it's like a standard email, we're having a meeting, is there anything that we should be aware of? And then it's kind of following their report to be, because it's really, we're trying to develop alliances and partnerships with stakeholders. I think there's certainly stakeholders and partnerships, and we don't necessarily need to have them here unless they want to be here. It can be, but it would really be nice to have that information.
So I'm wondering if we should bridge the invitation that Michelle had recommended with your concept and open that up to all of the Board of Trades and chambers. Are you thinking that within that network?
Because he's for the idea and he'll love that.
But I think again, along those lines, even if it's like we try to get once and then give them a forum, and if they want to take it, it's up to them.
And there's also the nice little bit of like, Del High's doing it. You know, because you send that email out, it's very easily something that just kind of gets lost in the inbox. But if it's sent like, here's your opportunity, and oh, by the way, somebody not you is already doing it.
Maybe that's the initial one, it's like we're doing this initial spotlight on Del High first, and then at the bottom, we'd like to take the next one. Yeah. That's the next way to do it. That way, let's say that way.
That's fantastic. And any written report would be included as part of correspondence. So then again, that is presented to council as part of the package. So great visibility for those organizations and their leadership.
And I think maybe the initial one is just to get the ball rolling, but we can maybe at a later time, maybe with some communications assistance. It might be, these are the 3 questions, because you know, it's very broad stroke. What are you doing? I don't want to have 18 pages, but it might be very specific questions that we would like to focus the conversation on. We'll get it started, and then maybe we'll get to the part subsequently.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Instead of like an open, instead of like a blank slate, just kind of like, what's this going on? Nothing's going on.
Or you know, I like to, there's some protocol, even if these are the 5, I think the 3 questions.
Yeah.
Standing.
And then you get to ask the wild card.
Yes.
Nice.
These are the 3 that we'd like, and then the wild card.
Yes.
Thank you. So are you seeing an additional motion to support that dialogue, that addition as well? Okay, so we're up to 4, and nobody is asleep at the wheel at this meeting. Very good. I'm impressed.
You just have to say it and it like becomes a formal.
Yes, it gets,
It's establishing the channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Establish the channel.
Yeah.
Well, and the connectivity, right? And I think, yeah, it's good synergy with all the leadership within the municipality. Okay, so we're at 4 motions.
So, Madam Chair, through you, perhaps I'll just very quickly I'll highlight some of the other elements we worked on. So as per the terms of reference, an orientation session for the board must be held every single year. And as we've done, we've had a couple of training sessions with this board. We also have a few months ago for quite a fulsome overview of what this board does. That was a huge success. That's already completed. So that's really good. And come the new term of council when this board is reinstated, we'll also have an orientation session again. So that's going to be good. We're going to continue providing feedback on staff reports as we, of course, is the lead on that. And as staff reports become available, they'll come for the boards for input. We did a great job with Project Microphone, and that was a huge success. And if you, I'm also happy to share that with you. Your references and comments were included in the report. It was mentioned in it. So that was a big win for the board, which was fantastic to see. We've discussed developing alliances and partnerships fairly in depth now, so I won't say anything else with that. And in terms of acting as a planning advisory committee, every time before this meeting, I have conversations with my colleagues in the planning department about if there's any items that require this board's attention. At this meeting, there is nothing, but as it's become available, I'm sure that those continue coming before the board for review.
Excellent. Great update, and I think before we move on, we should start with our motion number 1.
So, Madam Chair, through you, if I can, I'm going to share my screen. I've drafted a few draft motions, and we're happy to amend them. Okay, so my first draft motion is that the work plan be updated to remove the presentation from John Rogers regarding the Turkey Point rebranding. Are you okay with that wording?
Feeling good about it, yeah. So we're looking at a mover, and I believe that was Michael. Yeah, seconded by Michelle. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
You vote in favor for something you seconded or moved?
You do.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, the chair also votes.
Okay.
No one was opposed. I didn't throw that in, so.
So then the next motion is that the board invite the newly elected MPP to provide an update regarding senior government policies and programs which affect tourism and economic development.
Fantastic. Everyone feel good about that? Yeah. Okay, and that is.
Sorry, does that have to include the information that we're going to give her, or?
No, that can be sort of staff direction. I'm not going to come out with that.
Yeah. Excellent.
So we need to move in second.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, moved by Michelle, seconded by Helene. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks, Chantal. Excellent.
And our next motion is that the board invite Jim Norman from the Delhi Chamber of Commerce to provide an update on projects they are working on.
Very good. And who would like to move that? Helene? Seconded by Chantal. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Excellent. And this is the fourth draft motion. I'm happy to take amendments. It's a bit rough. That the work plan be amended to include a provision for a weekly invite for a community interest group to provide a written or verbal update to the board.
Monthly?
Monthly.
Monthly, yeah.
Of course. It'd be
Please don't change this to a weekly meeting. Don't know what's going on.
You don't want to see us that much.
We'll lose our finesse and appeal, right? So. Very well.
And can it just maybe to be amended to include that it's voluntary, they don't have to, you know what I mean? If there's a way to include that they have an option, give them more things to do, we're putting an invitation for them as to volunteer. Thanks.
And you're providing feedback. I'd like to give the floor to Chris, who has his hand up.
Just a quick question, Madam Chair, to Aaron. In one of the motions, I think it said senior government. Should it be provincial government?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just taking that verbiage from the terms of reference itself.
Okay.
Senior as in not the municipal government.
Okay. Just for, because senior government could be MPP, MP, so but if it's not necessary to be specific, then that's cool.
Or Prime Minister.
I mean, you know the question I can make that
Thinking big here, right? Good question, Chris. Thank you.
On this one, it's like probably more a grammatical thing or anything. The monthly voluntary invite is unclear if it's us volunteering or them. So provide a voluntary written or verbal update is probably a better place to put the word voluntary.
I like it. Yeah. Awesome. Any other amendments?
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense. It was just, who's the volunteer here? Are we the volunteer by offering them the option, or are they volunteer?
Excellent. So who would like to move this and second the motion? Moved by Michelle, seconded by Helene. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
I don't think that's moved or seconded this many things.
Look at you. See what happens when we tap into the person, right?
I think we
Right
all
on.
very irritated.
So I think we need a final motion now, which is to accept the updates and revisions to the work plan to be approved. Last motion on this item, so I'm looking for someone to move that and a seconder. I didn't capture Jerry's. Oh, Helene, she's putting, Helene, and seconded by Michael. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Great discussion. Moving on to item 6.2, and that's Information Review Advisory Committee Terms of Reference. Everyone was asked to take a few moments to review this. I think this might be a little bit of a deep dive.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the board. Really, the purpose of this information memo, first we'll receive this information, and then I want to bring forward a presentation that walk us through a very fulsome discussion. As is best practice in municipal government, a governance review is conducted of all boards and committees that are operating in the corporation. And this is a standard practice to be done before the term of council. So we're having a municipal election coming up in October, and ultimately a board and committee is created by council. So this board could return the same iteration or it could be totally changed. So this is just a preparatory step to get some feedback from the board members, see what's working well, what we can do better, and how legislative services staff can continue to support these boards to provide a very important avenue in the democratic process. So that's really the highlights of this information now, which is before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that post itself, but we're also going to move into a presentation actually asking for some fairly fulsome input from the board itself.
Okay, everyone, get your drinks ready, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'll be doing some more talking for a little bit.
And if we have questions or feedback, like you're looking for everything at the end of the presentation?
So I'm actually embedded in the presentation some strategic pauses. I'm going to ask you actually some very specific feedback.
It's a very weighted pause.
So it's not going to be a lot of me talking. I'll talk a little bit and then we will discuss.
When he looks around the room dramatically.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
Italics.
Am I speaking of that dramatic pause?
You were there.
Do you have any slides that just say applause?
That's not for the screen. I do love a good fulsome applause, especially again.
You made signs for those.
So this is the first of my presentation. There isn't much on these slides except for really the terms of references themselves. So I'm not going to read it for you, so I'll walk us through it. So first discussion point is the mandate, and this is the fulsome purpose of the board, which according to the term of reference is this. The mandate of the advisory board shall be to advise council on matters pertaining to tourism and economic development, develop alliances and partnerships between individuals, businesses, organizations, and government, provide a forum for discussion and coordination of tourism and economic development initiatives, and act as the planning advisory committee of Norfolk County. So the mandate is more or less our marching orders. The recommendations and advice provided by these boards are important, but ultimately it's up to council to ratify any decisions as the only decision-making body in this organization as per the Municipal Act. So that's at a high level what this board does, almost our mission and vision, if you will. So I'm looking for some feedback on, is there anything you would like to see amended on the mission? Anything you want to add and removed? Is the mandate sort of mean what you think it should? Maybe first discuss that.
Michelle?
I have struggled as the years have gone on with this board, that it feels like we're doing less and less and able to do anything proactive. Every time we feel like we're, when I compare us to the Agricultural Advisory Board, they seem to have the freedom to bring up issues in the community, talk about them, investigate them, and give advice to council. And it really seems like that's completely discouraged on this board. I know we're not like a lobbying body or anything like that for tourism and economic development, but at the same time, I feel like a large part of the reason that I joined this board, however many years ago, was it now? I don't know, Wanda. It felt like we proactively discussed things that we found were issues in the community or issues in economic development or, those kind of things. And that added, I think, a lot to our point. And now just having it so that, council brings us things, we give an opinion on the things council has brought us. It's very unlikely I want to continue on this board because it honestly feels like a waste of time now. Sorry to be very frank, but it doesn't often feel like we're addressing tourism and economic development issues in the community because, we can identify them, but there's active discouragement for us to bring anything up to council.
Can I just maybe broaden the discussion? There's a difference between a policy board and a working board. And that's what I'm hearing. And this is very much, from what I understand, a policy board within the framework. And the ad hoc committees become the working groups of the policy board. Now, if I'm incorrect, because I've sat on both for my entire career, so I understand what your concerns are.
But is there that other thing in Norfolk County? Like, I don't think there is the other thing in Norfolk County. Like,
What, a working board?
like a working board that does this
Specifically the tours.
particularly, there isn't one. Is there? So I joined this board. I
It
assumed
could be
we were both.
specific projects, and I know that throughout this term, we've had ad hoc committees that were formed that became working groups. So that's where the hands get dirty in the subcommittees, and I know we've sat on a grant subcommittee as well. So I understand that. I don't know if Aaron, you can add anything to that, or Zvi.
Well, just so I'm clear, is it that it's not enough of a working board, or is it that I heard that you're discouraged from bringing things forward? Is that the main issue that?
Yeah, I just, the reason I'm on, the reason I've been on the meeting is so, and the reason that I want to be on this board is because I'm happy to give feedback on things that everything we mostly get feedback on this, I could just get an email and I could just respond and say, looks great, these are some notes.
Yeah.
To me, what I was looking for in this, and what I really feel the majority of people that would join a board like this would be looking for, would be, we're community members that are involved in many, many different things. Like, we're able to probably identify some things that we can see problems in the community that need to be addressed and things like that, we can push, maybe help push them up the priority list for council, or, tell, we're boots on the ground of connections in a million different groups. That's kind of why we're all on this board. And it feels like the benefits of having this board are kind of, they have, because it seems like the terms of reference are written so that we specifically aren't bringing anything forward. And I would love to compare how the Agricultural Advisory Board terms of reference are written compared to ours to see what the difference is, because I don't really, they're bringing these very valid issues, but a lot of them are issues that we should also be, Agricultural Advisory Board that's the biggest economic driver in Norfolk County. They're bringing forth these issues. I know we haven't been tasked by council to bring forth these issues, and it definitely, I know that we're not supposed to do that, and it's due to the terms of reference. So to me, unless there was another committee that was doing that, it makes sense to me to have the agricultural or the Tourism and Economic Development Board also act as that kind of a body as well, because there needs to be something in Norfolk County for that.
And are you thinking, so the kinds of things that the AB bring forward a lot of them are advocacy type issues, right? So
exactly.
They're we don't like the situation with the bunk houses, we think it should be different. So that's the kind
absolutely.
Of, okay.
Absolutely.
I don't know, personally, I think that, AB is a little different because it's made up of a group of people in the industry, right? TDAB is different because it kind of brings from all parts of life.
But all of the parts of tourism and economic development, I guess. It's a broader industry, but it's.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
But it's easier, I would say, when you have one industry.
For sure, absolutely, yes. Right? But I could say anyone who's on this board, most people on this board know we have an issue in Norfolk County about building permit processing.
Right.
The fact that, a Tourism and Economic Development Advisory Board hasn't issued a statement that that's a problem in Norfolk County is bizarre to me. But I know we discussed this in the past, and that's just been told is not our role whatsoever. But it feels weird that as the only board of tourism and economic development in Norfolk County, that's not something that's been we all put forward a motion that this is an issue. right? Like that just feels weird, right? So, and it would be fine if there was another group that did that, but there isn't.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, I'll defer to you, Aaron, but is there something in there that discourages that sort of thing?
Well, and I know Helene would like to weigh in.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
no,
meant-
only because it's
Sorry.
so unbelievably related to exactly the what's going, like, I will say, honestly, like the last meeting that we were in when Brett Schuler was here, and that was one of the elements that I very specifically brought up, because you brought up the agricultural board, they brought up bunkhouses.
Right.
And I brought up, why are bunkhouses only for farm workers when they could be for tourism workers? And I genuinely walked out of that meeting feeling that I had been told, that's not like, I mean, that's very nice, and we get that it's frustrating for you because it affects you personally, but it also made me feel like I got a pat on the head and told like, that's really nice that you feel that way, but it's really not your place to make a big deal about that, or, you know, like make any effort to change it.
Yeah.
So that was very,
That was rolled into the survey process, right, of auxiliary dwellings and.
well, it was kind of, it was across a lot of different things, because
Yeah.
Brett Schuler was specifically talking about, you know, his farm workers and
Yeah.
like on a lot of different levels, and them being an audience or a market for economic development and tourism in the county. And he started, like, anyways, he brought up the possibility if I could have other, like, the backpackers, I think is what he brought up.
Yeah.
At which point it was like, if I could have backpackers staying in, you know, in a bunkhouse, whether they're in a farmer's bunkhouse or my bunkhouse, I could get them to work in my hotel during the summer or my event venue, and that would be amazing. But I very specifically had been told by planning that I wasn't allowed to do that because they're not farm workers. And so that is a major problem that affects tourism and economic development, the same way bunkhouse issues affect agricultural. But I definitely walked away from that meeting, and I'm sure nobody did it on purpose, but I walked away from that meeting feeling like, you know, it's not, like, this is not the place to talk about this. You know, just put in an application for a variance and waste tens of thousands of dollars in a year of your time.
So I did follow up on that, by the way. So we have a whole process now underway to figure out how we can do it, and we've raised some issues, and I know you're.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to solve that specific problem, but it was just such a perfect illustration of what Michelle was talking
And
about.
so that's a good example where, so there's two pieces here, I think, maybe one on the council side, one on the staff side, where that particular one, I met with Brett the following day. I said, you know what, I think you're right. There's definitely concerns. How do you stop those bunkhouses from being turned into purpose-built for tourism, where suddenly they're just for tourism and there's never any farm workers in there? So how do you, so, but the conversation's happening. But the issue from a staff perspective is, will council or TDAB help prioritize those issues, right? Because TDAB could come here every week with here's an issue, you talk about planning. We're right now working on getting our planning processes, site plan approval from 5 months down to 1 month. It's a massive undertaking, but we're doing that, right?
That warms my cold heart.
So, but how do we, right, if it comes week after week, at which point does either council or TDAP say, this is more important than something else that you're working on? Because ultimately, if it gets to council's gonna say, all right, Dev, make it so, right? And we end up having to figure it out. And I need help prioritizing as is, right? So that's my perspective. From the council perspective, I would think council would want to hear these things, but I could be way off.
Yeah, and so to me, the feedback that I'm talking about isn't to staff. It's to council to help them to prioritize what we're seeing as the major issues in the community.
Christine. Thank you, Madam Chair. Getting used to that.
I will never get used to it.
It's an interesting point you raise. And as my mother-in-law used to say, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And without data and without surveying, research, statistics, opportunity cost, papers. That I think is what will get the attention of council to reprioritize. Right now, you know, we need food, it's a huge priority, and I can see, I understand, but I guess what I would see as an opportunity for this board is to maybe play a more active role in collecting the data and the support and deputations to then back, like, we say a lot of stuff, right? Until you have the data behind it, I don't think we'll be acting on. And that's where I think the AB is probably a little bit more advanced because they have so much data. Everyone knows everything about farming. So I think in order for us, I hear what you're saying, and I agree, we've kind of wobbled a little bit. We have a new council, we've got speed, we've got all kinds of new people in place. If we maybe then say, okay, what is our message? What data we can collect to support that message? What expert witnesses we can get to testify to that and deputize to it? And I think then we would be taking the work we do, putting in more, legitimizing it with that, and then going and giving our staff resources to then go to council, and then the council say, okay, this is an issue. We have it all behind us, because I think up to now, we've just been like a very, yappy dog. We need to get that data behind us, and that will probably give us more, you feel like your voice is strength.
Yeah,
very
and I mean, like, I'm not like advocating like pet projects kind of thing or anything like that. Like what I mean is like even having that conversation about like, okay, so we're gonna proactively like, let's look at like just some random, we're gonna have to randomly pick like a sector to look at, and we're gonna, you know, go at it and do something.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mean like just saying, yes, there's a planning problem. Like it's more, we're not, it feels like our hands are even tied to like open the doors of a conversation about that and open the doors on what to prioritize, because what I have been told multiple times, which is like, it's the terms of reference, it's totally fine, and that's why we're talking about this, is, you know, don't be proactive about anything, wait for them to come to you and ask you questions, which is totally fine if that's what you got, like if that's what this is, but that's not what I thought it was, and that isn't what it was when I got on this board. Like, we were bringing things up like back in, and it just, I think
we were active with making deputations to council, and let's call it out, COVID over the past 2 years.
For sure.
Virtual hybrid has interfered with
absolutely
that feel.
And I think it's more just like, I think we've maybe now been like realistically enforcing the mandate more and saying, don't be proactive about those things, and you know, that's fine, but there isn't like, I would be totally cool with it if there was another voice for that in Norfolk, but there like isn't, other than the agricultural like advisory board.
And to go off what you said, like, and policy board it's not the kind of board that I thought I was joining either, I'll be quite frank. I thought it was more of a working board, but a very, like I felt, again, like I walked away from the last meeting, I forget where the gentleman spoke about the planners and how, like what we can do as a board and how they're so short, like those are kind of things, like I walked away being like, well, I didn't accomplish anything, we're still short, we still can't do anything about it, but we wrote it on paper.
They need money, yeah.
Yeah.
But like for money, yeah.
So the point of him coming to us was to.
Well, that was it, like, to just to touch on both, and am I supposed to say?
No,
you're
You're all good, you're all good. No reprimands at this space,
But
okay?
it's like, I totally agree with you, that we can't be the yappy dog, and we have to be based in data and everything like that, but something like Norfolk businesses can't find employees because employees don't have anywhere to live.
Exactly.
Is an existing problem. And then you know, from the planning perspective, it's as simple as, you know, instead of like, and I know it's not that simple because changing a line in the zoning bylaw is not easy, but I mean, it is as, let's call it, esoterically simple as changing it from farm workers to seasonal workers, you know, like, so it just feels like there's this kind of like, even when we have an identified problem and we have a relatively, you know, and there's an opportunity to present a workable solution, there's this idea that like you're saying, if we didn't come and ask you for the solution, and the solution that you're not, and the solutions that you're suggesting are not necessarily in the lane of where we were expecting or wanting the solutions to live in, then all of a sudden that feels like it's sort of like, you know, the terms of reference and the mandate and stuff like that is like, oh, well, we wanted your advice, but not that advice.
Yeah, like I didn't think this board was like going out and volunteering all the time and asking for your help. Like that's not what I thought this board was. But I realistically thought we were essentially drawing expertise from different communities and like different members of the community. We all have, you know, a million different things on the go, and bringing that together and both advising council, but also proactively advising council, not just passively advising council.
Can I just mention one other thing that may be causing this issue, not so much from a terms of reference perspective, but we kind of started, or at least I did, after the old strategy was in place, the economic development strategy that had been developed, which is not very strategic. It's just like a list of things. But in 2023, our goal is to update the economic development strategy. And so we go out there, we engage with the community, we take everyone's opinion, but ultimately we want to be strategic and focus on very core catalytic issues, not make it a dog's breakfast where you throw everything in there. Then we bring it to TDAP. And TDAP looks at it and mulls it over, and then we end up with a final product that goes to council after TDAP. Now the question is, let's say we've gone through that process and you've had a chance to put in all of those things that you think are important, and a year later, how much do you want to start chipping away at that? So for example, suddenly, you know, well, we think youth retention is important. Well, that's not in the plan. Well, we think more post-secondary is important. Okay, but that's not in the plan. So no one disagrees if it's important or not important. It's not in the plan. So the question is, how much, if we had a solid strategy, are we talking about things like you need to improve processes, or are we talking about things like, you know, economic development, you've been focusing on this, but you should focus on this instead, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to understand, is the level at which is it that we see a sudden issue that's come up with, you know, processes or you know, things that just don't make sense, as opposed to economic developments through strategic issues that, you know, priorities, we want to reprioritize your efforts on something else. And then the plan might as well go out the window, right? Because a true strategy is coherent. Everything's built together. If you start pulling out parts, then it's like, well, we want to work on that sector, that we know we need the labor for that sector, we need the infrastructure for that sector, we need the talent for that sector. If you pull out one piece, you might as well take out the whole sector piece, because it doesn't work without it. And so if you start bringing in new pieces and pulling out old pieces to make it work, it affects the total viability of the strategy. So sorry, that's a bit of a left turn, but that's I'm just trying to understand at what level you guys want to bring in.
Can I weigh in here? Because
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a way to marry the process and the structure with the fact that when something emerges, that we can inject it. We know it needs to go in the work plan, but it doesn't mean we can't. This committee has to be fluid enough where we address priority points and run with them, right?
Right.
And I think that's what I'm hearing. And another thing that Helene just said, which is very important, looking at, could we not look at that policy regarding bunkhouses or auxiliary housing, look at that actual bylaw and the replacement of from farm worker to seasonal, like get that circulated. Maybe that's something we need to look at regarding with the planning advisory board, and really hit that hard, knowing that this is interfering and creating an obstacle regarding seasonal employees, right?
Well, I love that we focused on my problem. It's not just your sort of framework that we define for ourselves as a committee to allow us to, you know, like identify one of those problems and go, this is the problem, and then here is, you know, an idea we have that could address it, and now what is that pathway to actually actively get us to accomplish something on it?
What are the hurdles?
Yeah.
But I think what.
Which I'm happy to do,
Steve
I'll write
said
about
is
this first.
We're advising, we're advising, so ultimately, we can't tell, like, the voters tell the council what to do. They voted them in. We are here to provide solid recommendation. At the end of the day, you know, like, we can't circumvent democracy. If they're agreeing with it and they decide to go through with it, then we've done our job to provide that information. I think where we were the most effective is when we TDAB-eyes the advise on industrial, commercial land policies, general zoning, land use policy, municipal infrastructure, marketing strategy, and other county policies. Any of those things need to have a TDAB lens, and that's what our job is, to kind of put the TDAB lens, and like, here's what's going on, and then here's the, you know, the TDAB version of how we modify it. I don't think we're gonna get them to shift too much, and let's face it, I wouldn't be here if that's what the case. I'm not looking to replace what the council does, but if we present the case, I'm not suggesting that we haven't, but if we, our job is to take a look at what they're doing from a TDAB perspective, and we're representative of all the groups that we are a part of. So yeah, this is the idea, because these people we've talked to, and here they all are, this is a sector-specific issue, and here's what their issue is. So, council, here we are funneling and making and focusing what that concern is from our perspectives. But, and I'm sorry, it's with the people. It's not just when Michelle says that this is a really bad idea. Okay, so what who cares? As much as it would be a very, you know, I'm not doubting it, it's great input. But that's when we're gonna get, that's when we'll have the priority shifting ability. That's when we'll have an impact. And I think that's what we're supposed to do. If you take a look at what this frame of reference is, we are the tourism economic development lens. And this lens, we are refracting the needs of all of these people, these community people we're supposed to be representing sort of around here. You know, alliances, partnerships between individuals, business, organizations, government, blah, 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 blah. We're supposed to take all of them and focus that laser beam and put it on it and say, all right, council, here you go. We've just refracted the message for you. You're gonna choose now to prioritize or not. We're giving you some good reason why it will shift. But there's a framework involved. We gotta start from somewhere. We got a plan, you know, we can evolve it at time.
And measuring the resources, and I think that as well, regarding expectation, how quickly things are changing. I think your feedback has been married into the current survey, and I think that's something we need to certainly follow up, and, but
I mean, even something as simple as including like that document as that's our reference document moving forward. Like the tourism and economic development study, is that what you're?
Strategy.
Yeah, absolutely, or like the new one, like, but basically like that, that's like a document.
That will be
that's-
our vital ones.
Yeah, but I think like including that in our mandate and like that's the kind of framework we work within to give advice to council. Like if there's no mention, like you said, of, you know, retaining youth in that.
Yeah.
Then the feedback we're giving should probably, it's not a focus of council. And I mean, I think that's enough of a, you know, like whatever the example is, like we use that as what we're looking into and what we're networking about and what we're, you know, what all of this mandate applies to. Those are the streams we're looking at and those are the issues that we're talking about, and you know, including that as much as our mandate and the framework that we work within, I think would, but also proactively being able to, you know, investigate in the community those issues, or have like, you know, if we identify one of the big issues, we have a subcommittee that we form to investigate it or something like that. I think that would just like add to our board being effective instead of just chatting.
Yeah.
well, and then there's the deputation, which we both know, like,
Mhm.
is very effective, right?
Yes,
Where there is a presentation made to council, you've done that. I've witnessed that over the past 10 years sitting on this board, so, and now that we're meeting in person, I think it's a lot easier for us to move things forward. So is there, I know Erin, you wanted to say something, and I'm not sure, Michelle, if there's a key recommendation you'd like to add to this space. So let's go with Erin first, and then
We can distill what we said again.
We've already,
Okay.
we may have already written the motion.
Okay,
Higher shot.
okay.
So So through you, Madam Chair, to the board, this has been absolutely fantastic feedback, and I absolutely want to encourage you to continue providing this feedback. I just want to give a bit of context to my own background here. Continue providing as much fulsome background. This will be a big part of the report, so I want to continue this. And this, what I'm about to say is not to say what's wrong or right about what's been said. It's probably just that background, institutional background. I've been with Norfolk County for about a year now. It's been an absolutely fantastic year, and I'm very proud to be part of Norfolk County's public service. But I don't bring that much institutional knowledge. I've only been here for a year, as I said. This board's been going for many, many years. I've been serving for quite a few years, and that's been, I hope, a very rewarding experience. And through any board, you can go through integrations changes, staffing changes. Clerks ourselves have gone through different staffing, right? We've had several clerks who supported the board. And because of that, I don't necessarily know what happened in the past. I can only speak to what's on the document and the minutes I read and what's going on right now. So what I want to just sort of stress is that the power of this board is advisory. And that advice is reflected in motions from the board. As you can see when you look at my minutes, they're very, very sparse. They're probably sparse you've ever seen in your life of most boards. And that's because under the Municipal Act, it's very clear. I, as the clerk, cannot act for that much input. All I can say is without note or comment. And what that means under the Act is that we only include resolutions. So it's good to have these discussions and provide this input, but unless those things, those feelings, those thoughts are actually turned into a formal motion, and I'm here to support that, but I cannot give you a motion. We got to work on it together, and members themselves need to bring it forward, and they're ratified. And those resolutions go to council and are ultimately ratified by council. So going forward, either during this term or if you choose to be part of another board, just take the initiative if you're comfortable, and I'm always available to help in the meeting or even prior to the meeting to formulate that motion, because that is really the core of the decision making. So once we have that resolution, that's why moments ago I helped formulate those 4 motions, because unless we have those written down, they're not going to council.
Right.
Second, processes have changed, and again, I can't necessarily speak to it, but we've adopted a new process where now, once a resolution has been brought onto the minutes, they go to council. And that's been going on in the past, but in the past, a council wouldn't actually take those motions themselves and have them ratified by council. Now the process is if we make a motion, they go to council, and a member of council, typically one who sits on the board, but doesn't have to be, will actually pull that item and say, at the board meeting, this was decided. I want to bring this forward for ratification. And now very systematically we'll do that. So I think this is not a new process, it's more of a clarification process. So I think it's really helpful.
Yeah. When you say that, thank you. The motion, if there was a deputation or a piece of information, like Wanda was sometimes really good at putting something to read, an article or something, and that article spurred the conversation, which put the motion in. So if we were to, for example, we do a survey with a bunch of people, and this is all of the B&B providers, this was what was presented to this committee, we discussed it, and the motion to whatever that came from it. When it goes to council, is that piece of paper along with the motion? Would that be, so we know where that's coming from?
So,
okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the members, there's a variety of different options here. So hopefully your motion is going to be fairly fulsome. It's going to provide all that important data.
Okay.
But again, if you want to provide more input, the chair can always register the deputation and actually speak more fulsomely to it. But also that council member is going to be at that meeting and should be able to speak to it as well.
So I guess maybe, I don't know if somehow I missed the training session that you said that happened earlier, because I feel really bad if I was in it and didn't realize that that's what was happening. But, like in terms of like saying a motion, I'm like, I'm not, so does that mean that out of like, for example, last week's meeting, it would have been like, I needed to take the initiative to write we proposed a council like re-examine the wording of the zoning bylaw on this and this from farm workers to seasonal workers. Like, so if that's the right way to word, supposedly, like if that is a vaguely correct way to word that motion, how am I also providing a context that justifies why they're reviewing it? Like, because I'm like, okay, so let's say I give you that motion, but I mean, like, what other information in those sparse notes would council get from that to understand sort of what the conversation that led, that led to that was? Like, what was the problem that we know exists? What was the, thought process that led us to this little kind of light bulb of, ooh, maybe we could address this problem that exists in tourism and economic development with this possible kind of out of left field solution, which is now the thing that I put a motion in front of you to examine. Like, what's our opportunity to establish context around that motion so that they don't just kind of look at it and go like, what, you want us to change the bylaw for no reason? I don't get it.
Subcommittee, right? Subcommittee is to me, so in Barrie, a counselor, not even a committee, but a counselor who wanted to introduce something new would first have to do research and present forward a justification and would have to say, this is how many hours of staff time I think this is gonna take, and this is the cost. I think for something like what you're proposing, have a little subcommittee meeting, because you want to bring in the people who may already be doing things in this area, may have good rationale for why it won't work. Maybe somebody will say, you know what, here's the issue, like, oh yeah, that actually is a big problem, right? So have a meeting, and then you've collected all that data, you understand the implication, and if it's an issue that affects that day, you can actually say, we think that this should be a top priority, and in fact, maybe replace this, so that your motion has all that backing, and maybe even a way to make it easy for council to say yes. Because if you just say, we think you should review this.
Oh, no, I think that's crazy. That's why I was saying.
Yeah, so I think the subcommittee.
What is that? I think it would be nice to have a path mapped out for us exactly, like you just walking through that. It's like, oh, okay, I get that. That is like a process to work through to get to everything that's needed to present.
Yeah.
Okay, there was Aaron, there was Christine, Michelle, should I put you on?
I need to
down and maybe there will be, Jerry does not want to be a part of this conversation.
I'm trying to
So through you, Madam Chair, to the board, I can give you an example or maybe even a story that will be a little bit helpful. Let's just say this board really wanted there to be an apple festival. And every year we want to do an apple festival. What would be a proper way to do that would be, and I probably should actually apologize, actually we'll be more clear in the orientation. The process would probably be that, as we all know, we meet monthly, maybe a week or two before our meeting, the chair and I, and we have a meeting called Agenda Review, where we discuss what we want on this agenda. And ultimately the chair is in charge. It is up to her to decide what's on that agenda in consultation with staff, but members themselves should bring those ideas forward. If you really want Apple Day, make sure to send an email to the chair or probably through me as the clerk, and I'll collect that information. And then we, the chair, and I will meet and discuss, okay, we need to discuss the minutes, we need to discuss the terms of reference, we need to discuss this, but also, Chantel brought forward Apple Day. Madam Chair, this is what she wants, here's the email, and you say, looks good, we'll talk about the agenda at the meeting. Then the meeting comes, we'll say, okay, we have Apple Day on the agenda, and Chantel's gonna talk about that, and she'll say, we really need an Apple Day. And what would happen would be, she probably propose that, let's say, that a subcommittee be formed to study the possibility of having an Apple Day. That gets taken, that goes to council. Council looks at it and says, oh, the board really wants to create an Apple Day committee. We'll approve that. Then staff will help a little bit, we'll probably go back on it, but these 3 or 4 members will do a big study of it. Where's the best day to have Apple committee? Where's the best safety plan? What are the best apples to promote? Whatever, it doesn't really matter what Apple specifically. But then that committee would bring forward their advice, and they probably provide some sort of very fulsome review. It is the board recommendation that Apple committee be held every Thursday for the next 3 months, blah, 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 blah. That will be the motion. The board will ratify that motion. This is our official recommendation. That'll go to council. Council will think, you know what, Apple Day is a really great idea. We need to ratify that. And then all of a sudden staff have been directed to make Apple Day happen. But also council, again, they're the only decision-making body. Maybe they think, apples are important, but we actually like pears a lot more. So instead we're going to do pear day or whatever. That's where the process, and I know that's, I do love pie. Apple pie. Apple pie.
I have a whole thing for you said.
Okay, let's make a motion.
But that's sort of a silly example. That's sort of how it works.
So are you then making, are you making this subcommittee about the problem or the solution, or the proposed solution?
It's about
Research.
Yeah, it would have to be about the research, because it couldn't be just about you, it would be about all these other
So
companies or
using
bed and breakfast.
my example, it's like, I wouldn't, would the subcommittee be about examining the bunkhouse bylaw, or would it be about, creating housing for seasonal workers
Well,
for the county? What's
the issue is
So
non-seasonal workers can live here.
Yeah,
I
no
can't get-
seasonal workers
I can't-
have a
I
place
can't
to
get a
live.
seasonal worker.
I have to
because
hire
they-
people year round, just
Yeah.
like, that's just what I do.
Yeah.
So it's the problem, if I may, it's the problem definition, right? Here's the problem.
Which is,
Here's the
how
problem.
people don't, like, employees don't have a place to live.
Here's the problem, and here's the facts around this problem. There's no housing, but we also have this that might be used, blah, blah, and then what's the recommendation? So
Okay.
it's that, and then and as you're doing that problem definition, then you're gathering your research and you're, well, that's not just us, it's them too, it's them, and all of a sudden what you've done is you magnified it. It says, not just my problem, this is a big problem, and here's what we found, and here's what we're recommending, then you're talking.
Yeah, in terms of the process, that's what I'm trying to understand, is this subcommittee that we're forming, again, using my example, is the subcommittee about changing the bunkhouse bylaw, or is the subcommittee about the broader problem being the no housing for employees seasonal or
Broader issue
otherwise?
is
The broader issue.
Okay.
bunkhouse
And
was their
then we
recommendation.
funnel down into, okay.
And that could be your recommendation. You could come out the other end and say, we recommend the bunkhouse solution, or throughout your investigation, you may figure out
That
that
makes
that's not
sense.
viable, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Michael wanted to say something, and also Michelle. But I also wanted to identify on our agenda, number 8, other business. This could be a point for us to start this process. So there's another opportunity, right? Yeah, so Michael and then Michelle.
The only suggestion I have is I feel like there's a gap between council and us. Like, does council ever bring us issues to address? Like, without your knowledge and experience, and like, I wouldn't have that to bring that to the table to address the issues of seasonal farm workers. And it just seems like we're kind of grasping at air, maybe not focusing on the things sometimes we should be. Besides you bringing things to the table, which is excellent. I just feel like we should be helping you more.
And you will with that strategy. Everything that I've done since I've started here has been based on conversations and analysis. I knew we needed an economic recovery plan, and we had a committee for that. But everything else that we've done has been kind of ad hoc a little bit. It's like, I see an issue, I'm going to launch a project for that. I think we need to do that better. Or, hey, project microphone, that would improve this, but it's not coherent, right? A strategy should be coherent so that everything connects to everything else and supports and reinforces. We don't have that, but we will, and that's where you guys will play a role in developing that.
I just think without like me watching council meetings and that kind of stuff, we may not be privy to what the issues are that we should be focusing on in Norfolk County. You know, if this new recovery plan or whatever is addressed and given to us ahead of time or next year, like, we can focus on those things. But right now, obviously this is a huge issue. Seasonal workers, we had Brett Schuyler talk on it, but again, I feel like we're not fixing it. It just kind of, but maybe going forward, that's.
But I mean, going through the process that Aaron was talking about, it's going to be pretty easy to discover that, like, yeah, there's lots going on behind the scenes with this. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we can talk hours about this, like, obviously, and probably bill over wine, but like we can talk hours about this kind of stuff, but like, following the process that you're recommending is like, you know, make sure you bring a planning person in to discuss that with you. And they might just be like, well, we're 7 months into that exact investigation, or, you know, this is why you can't do that, exactly what you were talking about. Like, well, then how do you limit it to, you know, like, I'd love to just have a pop-up motel in my farm, but I know I can't, so I don't even bring the idea up, right?
This is where the subcommittee
Yeah.
would find those hurdles first.
Yeah,
Because essentially, once you go to council, it's, okay, we've done all the heavy thinking.
Yeah.
We've discovered the things that are out there, and we've addressed them, and we've found the roundabouts. So we've done the heavy thinking, we just need you guys to do the deciding.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I think we become more effective, the more heavy thinking we do. I discover the problems and the conflicts ahead of time and find a workaround, so that all they're doing is they haven't got time to sit there and think it through. That's what we're kind of here to help do. And I agree that right now, we're in reactive mode. I mean, everyone is still COVID reactive, and I get the frustration. No one's planned. Anyone who's planned and followed a plan, forget it. I got plans up in the shredder because it just didn't work. So we're now, I hope, coming out of it, we can settle down to a bit of a less reactive and more proactive. But now I think we have a real opportunity to shine in that we have all been simmering with these issues. We got to put them down. It's almost like, Aaron, we need a reverse engineer version of what you just said. I appreciate the explanation you did, and I think it was brilliant. We almost need the reverse engineering. We need the approval from council. Here's what it's look, and let's reverse engineer it. What do we need? And then reverse engineer it.
Ideas. When do we need them? Now.
But we have lots of ideas, but I think the big thing is the only way for us to help council prioritize is to do all that heavy thinking and the research to then say, we've got it all through. Here's the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. But here's our recommendation, and we need you now to act on it. Because once we do that part of the research is, okay, we discovered, this is happening. Oh, we might need to talk to someone in the county or now the staff. All that legwork does ahead of time, because it goes there, then approved, and then it becomes a big mess.
Yeah,
And then I think it's hard to act on.
And I mean, I think that we're naturally a group of people that want to do that, want to go to that way, but even getting to the first step of coming up with the ideas of what we want to focus on is where I see issues with the mandate, to go around full circle.
Yeah. This is where, when we have this, the mandate, county strategic plan for tourism and economic development. Once it gets done, it'll be in place. Then we'll just ever so gently re-engineer what we need to somehow match the words in here, so that then we can make it happen and the council can make it happen and it can get funded. So they're not going to say, I would be very surprised if we said, here's what we want, and they go, yeah, sure, it looks great. That's not going to happen because they got to staff it, they got to get, people in Langton, not the stuff people in October, blah, blah, blah. So there's some issues even beyond our, frameworks that we need to be, that we're not even, we don't know.
Absolutely.
So I would say, yeah, that strategic plan is great. We take a look at it from the TDAB lens. We do the subcommittees and gather the research to help prioritize within the strategic plan. In the meantime, up to that point in time, if there's any burning desires, we subcommittee down, sort of, start to get some of those, and then hopefully, we find them a way to get in there, or maybe we do, or we do them in the meantime before this happens. But I think it all starts and stops with how much work we're willing to do and how many more people we need to suck in to help us. It may not be staff or county, but I think here's the opportunity. If we want to make this a priority, we have to demonstrate that it's more than just the people in this room that think we have an issue with it. We have to show that, no, where I'm here, I got 30 people behind me who have the issue. You got another 40, you have another 50. Oh, shoot, that's a lot of people in Norfolk County. I'm tired about this. It now becomes top of the food chain, right? And then if we talk to our council people, and I talk to Chris Van Ness and say, Chris, this isn't working for me, and here's why, and here's it's not working for me and 20 others. We're gonna get support, then that motion's gonna fly. Because we've all done that. If that makes sense.
Okay, Helene?
I think that's, it's just knowing that there is a path to get to making something happen, because up until now, at least my experience having started in this committee basically right after the world shut down, was that, we come in a room, we get on a video call, we talk about a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of brilliant people that have a ton of very broad, but still very specific experience. Talk about a whole bunch of things, but ultimately, there's no path for any of that brilliance to make it through to actually changing anything. So, knowing, now that there's a much clearer path.
We're not changing anything, we're advising.
The only other thing that I wonder as well, because now I have a much better sort of, I have more visibility into sort of what has to be, all the things that need to be done to actually make a, something get better.
Absolutely.
Through this committee. So that's about, in this in this specific thing, it was a problem that I know exists, and then something in this meeting triggered a thought that made me go oh my God, this is a thing that could possibly solve a problem that I already know exists. So, that's me pushing it forward. But I would also think that, I'd like there to be some sort of opportunity for it to come back the other way as well, in terms of sort of I know that there's these Excel documents that were filled out at one point with everybody in this things, areas of expertise, and there's particular skills, all this, all that stuff. But I mean, does council really know that they have those resources at their fingertips other than buried in an Excel document
Well, I
somewhere?
think that was for us.
Well,
But
there's,
And also for staff planning and the appointments.
Yeah.
so whether it's council or staff planning, but more what I'm saying is there's an opportunity as well to be we just, from council or staff, whoever, is there is this problem that may not have been in some of, established in our terms of reference, but we're trying to solve this problem. Oh my God, wait a minute, there's a room full of there's a marketing person, and there's an event person, and there's a there's a doctor, and there's a venture capitalist, and there's whatever, oh my God, why don't I just are they in a position to go oh, well, I'm just gonna lob my problem over there, because you never know what's gonna come out of it. And that also is the opportunity to go, because people like us are the exact type of people that you put a problem in front of us and we find 17 different possible ways to fix it. And it doesn't necessarily always feel like that's happening outside of, a giant report was done, and so I'm gonna present the PowerPoint. We have presented the PowerPoint that was made to present to 17 other committees, and so an opportunity of making it so that there's a little less, it's a little less egregious you don't have to have a giant 200-page PowerPoint about some giant, economic growth report or whatever. It's just, we're realizing that.
Yeah,
But
the unfortunate
this
part about
problem.
that is the other person who
Taxpayers'
is,
dollars,
the other person who is
and
trying to get their
accountability.
wheel greased, has got that paperwork. So to put feet to your specific issue, when did you get a few people together, a few business people in your same boat?
So
And we
I'm
could
not-
do a SWOT analysis.
I'm not talking about my problem.
No, but
I'm talking.
this could be
Let's say
our
That's the
pilot project, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that, and not
Yeah.
us identifying any problem with pushing one forward. I'm saying more if in your strategy development or in your discussions with the rest of staff or a counselor, are you guys allowed to say, we identified this problem, we're working on it on our own to try and find solutions, but
Can staff?
just toss it back to TDAB and be that's,
I would.
because there's us identifying problems and pushing forward solutions, but it's also
Through the motion piece, right? This goes back to the structure. And by the way, I'm so glad this is our second in-person meetings. I mean, you all joined during the pandemic. These were virtual meetings that no doubt you were not aware of the superpowers as an appointed advisory member, and the leadership that council has approved and staff sitting at this table. If you identify something, you bring it forward. We have a discussion and say, hey, I just don't want to have a discussion. I want to run with this. How do we make a difference? I'm unsure. Ask that question. We have policies, we need data, right? How do we build that framework? Everything is here for us to address any kind of concern that we uncover through the process, building that ad hoc, making a recommendation, having that data behind it, rolling it into the work plan, making sure there's a motion that's moving that forward so it gets the attention of council in our minutes that this was a fulsome conversation where we've identified what we feel is a priority concern, that we're going to put some time and expertise and research into it. So you're sitting here at that table, and let's make it happen. you know?
I understand, I guess I'm just saying that, so I identified my problem, and we've all agreed that, like, it sounds like it's gonna be the first thing that we push things forward, and that's great.
Yeah.
I'm saying, for the next problem, what are the opportunities for that, like, so obviously that proves how we do that from this room out.
That,
I'm asking, like, let's set that whole thing aside. It's for the next problem, what is the way for staff and council to lob a problem back to us without it having to be some big complicated thing that they had to do a giant presentation or report to even talk to us about it? You know, like, is there an opportunity for staff or for council to, you know, just lob a broad, simple problem, you know, because like, they're like, oh my God, I want TDAB's help, but if I have to write like 200 slides and have to do a giant presentation and have to, you know, like, to get them to even think about it, then you know what, I'll just solve the problem myself.
No,
So-
I would bring issues to you guys. If I had an issue, I would bring them to you, no problem. Council would sometimes say to us, we want you to look at this and consult with TDAB,
Okay.
right?
nice.
Yeah, and then thank you, Zvi, and also Chris, for that level of transparency. I feel that I feel that you have brought things forward for consideration. And I think for me, maybe I feel that way because I have that pre-consult meeting with Zvi, with Chris, with Aaron, and I'm privy to that. So, and I think Aaron has also encouraged anyone that if you want that on the agenda, we need a conversation. We need to consider building a mechanism for data and identify if this is a broad problem. We need to get it on the agenda.
I think you're right.
Right.
I've only ever seen the big presentation. I don't see the informal sort of, we have this problem, can you help us?
Yeah, right, so we can start that, Michelle.
The one, so this is separate from the one at Ground Sleeper. I think that goes back to.
Another one.
I think, no, I just.
Oh,
No,
no.
but this goes back to what Wanda talks about all the time about visibility. So the more council sees us do things, the more they think to ask us for things. So right now, we're in a position where we're just reacting to the like 5 things that were kind of assigned a year, grant, feedback on the plan and like that kind of stuff. But I mean, this really goes back to like what you kind of are saying, like what you've been saying often about like making ourselves visible, but like with a purpose, like throwing things our way for advice, and you know, we're happy to give it. It doesn't need to be a big problem. It doesn't need to be a giant report. It can be, you know, as council, we've talked about this idea. What do you guys think of it with your knowledge of the community? But the one thing that I was just like remembering as we were talking more and more and more, and I know this is very discussion based, so it's very different, but I do remember when I first started on the board, we did have a lot more proactive things that we brought forth to council, but a big problem with that was the lack of the filter of adding it to the next agenda. So things would come up organically, then we'd spend half an hour talking about it. I think that like being very careful with that, which I know you're going to be, but like being very but like things like from the last meeting, that being identified an issue, everyone on the same page, somebody triggering us to say, let's add that to the next agenda. And you guys discuss that on your own, you know, maybe say, hey, Elaine, can you grab some more information on this issue, talk to Brett or something, so you can talk about it at the meeting. To me, that, like, though now part of what I have difficulty with is it hasn't felt like we've done anything for a while. What a big problem was when I first started on the board was we would talk about no cohesion, no coherency to what we were doing. We just talk about an issue, talk about another issue, make a recommendation to council, but they're, like you're saying, it's just here's a sentence to council. Like, thanks, cool, bye. Like, why are you're just wasting our time, you know?
That's what I was hearing.
Thanks.
So, yeah, and I think what changed eventually that helped that was, you know, okay, let's put this on the agenda for the next meeting. So just being really careful to do that, I think will help this be more effective.
Well, and that's a good point, because you have been here at this table for several years and watched the revitalization of a new work plan, right? And a change, and and then a virtual, right?
Yeah, of
Which
course,
which
yeah.
completely changed how, with new individuals that we're building relationships with. And we've always discussed in our pre-consult meetings, how can we ensure that everyone feels valued and engaged, and because it's tough, right? It has been very difficult. So I think just this discussion today tells us that, I mean, if there is any recommendations as a result of this conversation that needs to go into a working group under other business into a recommendation of change of motion for the mandate, we should bring it forward. And I'm also going to acknowledge, hey, Chantel, we know you're there virtually. I don't know, I'm sure if you want to weigh in on any of this, but it's been a very good conversation. Chris, you as well. So
Do you feel, Aaron, that all of what we've been discussing still falls within the mandate?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I think it does.
Okay.
So I think, don't necessarily look at the terms of reference as like a shackle, rather it's a guiding document.
Yeah.
And it's also important that, so when I say bring a recommendation you want on the agenda, what these are the lenses we myself recommend to chair is we need to ensure that this document is being followed. So as long as your idea about Apple Day is in line with terms of reference, we're going to approve it. Not that I'm a very experienced public servant, I've been doing this for about 2 years now in committee support. And a common concern I face with a lot of members is that it's a lot of talking. And a lot of people want to bring ideas forward to committees and boards that aren't actually related to the terms of reference. And that's something I'm very cautious of, because ultimately this is our direction from council.
Yeah.
So anything we want to discuss needs to be in line. But all the things that are outlined to me, from my perspective, seems to be in line with the terms of reference, right? Although if you don't want a discussion of aerospace, unless it's maybe aerospace, tourism, it's not relevant. But everything that explained is totally relevant. In my view.
Excellent. You seem to be good at hearing us and then being like, okay, this makes sense.
What do you all just said?
Yeah, what you all just said makes sense. Yeah. Translating us to formal talk, formal speak.
So do you want a motion regarding the bunkhouse concern?
I do think it's something that's worth
So
looking into, and so sorry.
should we get that,
Should we
should we do that at number 8 and move a motion? Okay, so, and then that can actually talk to the fact that we are a planning advisory committee, unless that changes in the future, because that could change. That could change, right?
So I've drafted motions, that was a
Yeah, they're
motion.
like, is Helen still on the committee? Because that is not a planning.
And we'll discuss this.
And these discussions, there's nothing personal. I mean, you might, through the course of running your business, identify something that fits with the mandate. And then we need to examine through research if it represents a larger concern, the negative impact to tourism or economic development, and then follow the structure and the process, right? So this is all good. This is all good, so.
So I think that a lot of discussion.
Aaron, yeah.
Should we go to the next slide?
Yep.
Do you want to put us on that side?
Oh my God. So
Okay, everyone is on mute until.
Yeah.
So this should be a little bit less controversial. It's the composition of the board itself. So as per the terms of reference, there's to be no more than 9 members. There's supposed to be 1 council representative, who counts, of course, right now is Councilor Martin. And there's 4 members appointed for a 2-year term on even number of years, and there's 5 members appointed for a 2-year term on odd number of years. So that's sort of what your committee is made up of.
The council member has changed a couple times, so there's not a term to when, like, could we just have a different council member every week? Like when Councilor Martin, I didn't mean to say when. If she, because she's running for mayor, if she becomes mayor, I assume the mayor isn't in a committee like this.
Okay. So through you, Madam Chair, so
Yes.
the mayor is an ex officio member, so technically she's a member of all committees.
Okay.
Committee.
For obvious reasons, the mayor cannot possibly be at every committee meeting available.
Maybe
What is it?
they can, maybe they can.
But a committee member, every year, clerks brings forward a report to council regarding all the various boards and committees and agencies that we support, asking for council members to be appointed, and they nominate themselves and be nominated by their colleagues, and usually for a year or 2 term.
Okay, because I guess that's my question. Is it normal that, like, I feel like the council member that has been in this group
Yeah,
has swapped
it
a
normally
lot?
doesn't change
Okay,
that much.
all right.
Historically, we would have a council member for like, honestly, before the quick switchover, I think we had the same one forever.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we did. It happens on occasion,
But then he
right?
wouldn't have
Yeah,
to-
it could be scheduling conflicts or something.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
time of meetings,
They
so,
would have to work around our schedule.
yeah.
So, some feedback I'd love to receive is how many members should be appointed? How many members of council should to see on your board? Would you be willing to serve for a 4-year term rather than a 2-year term? And any other feedback?
I know we had a youth member as well.
Through you. No, I
I
was gonna go there as well, yeah, you, yes.
Yeah, I think last year we decided to have a youth member because
Yes,
normally.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
So that was a 10th member, I believe.
Through you, am I supposed to say that?
Yeah, you're supposed to.
There was also talk when Brett was here about a seasonal, or maybe they were an informal member or something. Because like we were talking, because when we were talking about the night market and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up something about, they have a unique perspective as well that could be represented well here. CD is a swell in population quite a bit in the summers.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
If we take a look at what we do here as a funneling system, council funnels the will of the people. We're funneling the perspectives of people and stakeholders in this space. I'd be very cautious to broaden the official members here to be so broad that we now become, I don't know what, like, if we're starting to get outside of the mandate and get too many people from all areas different. If we have a very specific problem we're identifying subcommittee, and we invite people on the subcommittee with very specific expertise to help gather the information, provide the expertise that we then kind of regurgitate, provide counsel. But my fear in having so many people as a member, it'll be very difficult to stay focused, and I think it'll be very difficult to get decisionings done if there's so many people that we're gonna just be kind of chasing tail. There is always an opportunity to invite someone as a resource, aka me. There's always an opportunity to say, hey, we're working on something. This is part of the networks that we're relying, that I think this mandate and this group is trying. We need your contacts, we need your contacts, we need your contacts. So if there's an issue specific that needs some additional support, it'd be through you and your people to gather that stuff. And it might be for an ad hoc specific. That way it keeps this thing clean, this decision-making sharp and focused, and then you bring in the help to do some of the weirder lifting that we're not doing. Otherwise, we're gonna be scattered.
I agree.
So is 9 good? Is 9 average for a county like this?
I think so, yeah.
My board is 10, Metro will be 10.
With the addition of the youth representative, right? And that was actually fairly new. Yeah, and then we have those invitations, strategic invitations, right?
Yeah.
That's,
Strategic and.
yeah, which is very important, so.
My feedback on through you, Madam Chair, to Aaron. My feedback on 4 years instead of 2 is I wouldn't like that because I think that 2, people are willing to serve out the 2-year term even if they don't have enough time. But 4, you're gonna get a lot of people quitting midterm and have like vacancies middle of the year that you can't fix until next January or whatever. But I think the 2 years, it would, like, you know, somebody gets really busy at 1 year, they'll finish probably the 2 years, but they don't have to finish 4 years.
Chantel,
Oh, sorry.
we see you.
You're good.
Yes, I'm here.
Good, yeah.
I was seeing as we're supposed to have 9 people, I'm curious as to how many people we actually currently have. I know some have resigned.
39 Chair, to Chantel. It's my understanding that we have 8 members right now. So council market is a voting. When I talk about members, just to be clear, I talk about voting members, not staff, or not Zita or myself.
Board advisors.
Or advisors. Just voting members. So for example, today, Sarah and council market are not present. So I think we would have 8 members then.
Yeah.
Which means we need 5 members at all times present to make quorum. Also, it's illegal, so we don't want to do that.
Yeah, so we know our youth representative, there was a scheduling change. So her commitment, she could no longer continue. So that is a vacancy. And then we'll look at any kind of appointments of committee members that are in the rotation, whether or not there's interest to reapply. Yeah, Michelle?
Are we able to fill vacancies like middle of the year?
We can,
So,
yeah.
through the Madam Chair, that's an ongoing discussion. Ordinarily, we absolutely would fill vacancies, and a part of this wholesome review, as I call them, is that we're gonna be actually running a recommendation on how to streamline appointments, maybe there'll be an appointments committee, something like that, it'll be standing with council. The reason we haven't filled them in the last little bit is because we are very, very close to the election, and once the election happens, all boards, all committees automatically are vacated, because ultimately they make provisions to council, the current council, and the next council needs the opportunity to appoint their own boards and committees. So that's what we are currently ongoing.
Oh, which is why the 4-year, okay, I understand.
That's why initially the time I've been thinking about is recommending a 4-year term, because that would always be the exact same as council. Understanding that might not be feasible for workload, but that's sort of the thinking behind that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, Christine.
2 chair, 2 there and 3 chair.
You could just like roll it with them. Just roll it.
With respect to composition, one thing that's kind of interesting from a continuity perspective, and I appreciate we're in a council and want to elect all new people, but in order for the institutional knowledge of this committee to continue on, is it something that, not that I want to shackle our president, but, you know, from a succession planning that the president, you know, and the past president stay on, and like there's, I don't know if there's a succession planning framework built in here, but in a position of the president position, that should almost automatically move forward, because you need that continuity. I don't know. I just think-
Well, and I wanted to talk to Michelle as well, because you know what, you want everyone to have an opportunity to lead, to rotate, but you also want to establish continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very important, and in all the framework of committees and boards that I've managed, yeah.
So like the co-part.
Succession, that's very important, right?
Anything I've done is like, okay, if we were working on a project and you were the lead and I was the assistant,
Yeah.
theory being that in 2 years' time, you're moving along, I'm now gonna be the lead and someone else is coming into the assistant, so you've got that.
I have no interest in being chair again, so you can.
Oh, you know,
somebody
you
not
know,
follow. No, I hate running meetings, so I'm so unhappy.
But I don't want to be that. But you can host, right? Oh, yeah, you can host. Okay, all right.
I have no interest.
Okay.
No
I'm
interest.
gonna tell you all right now that you never won.
Through the chair to Aaron, the other consideration that might be wanted to be considered here is the inclusivity aspect of the selection and the composition of our committee here. We may want to put a priority or something around inclusivity. So we're more reflective of the actual community.
You also had, you kind of under your breath asked what youth was, and
What
I'm
is
curious what the answer to that is.
Is it under 30?
Oh, the criteria,
Youth.
yeah, that's so old, that's a couple years ago.
Because I know there was a grant application that had youth was under 40, and I was really good at that.
Ah.
It's different.
I'm like 2.5 years off, this is not fair.
There is
I was like,
actually a
that's what, there was
criteria.
one recently, and I was like, I'm not youth anymore, like, leave me alone.
Because we do have, like, you think of National College, they've got a environmental program that's around tourism and things like that. Might it be that you have someone recruited from that program as a youth, a permanent youth, you know, it's one of their
Through
The
Fanshawe.
college always kind of provides one.
give us talking is terrible. Give us someone, a youth member in that program, because what we like to also, yes, they're learning, but it's all, we're also liking to get some of their new
Oh, yeah.
fresh ideas, right?
Sure.
Because we're all.
So as an advisor.
Well, and there, with that leadership appointment, I know with our youth representative, I did spend some one-on-one time, because it is a new space for someone representing that criteria. And there's some heavy conversations that can take place outside of what they're familiar with. So I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, I like someone with some knowledge, but also some maturity, because we are talking about some very, heavy stuff and sometimes some confidential stuff, so you just want someone who can have it, in that structure, you hope that they would come with the skill set because of the syllabus.
Well, there's also the fact that if they're getting put forward through their program, these teachers and faculty know them and, if someone is like, I want to be on the committee and they know
Or
that
it's a
that's not,
leadership
that they're not suited to it, they might not put them forward, so
So
we
maybe
have that
leadership
extra.
board, and can you imagine if you're doing well in the valedictorian of that class, you have now the opportunity to serve, that's kind of gives them something to kind of schedule.
Probably only a year program though, so you know, something every year.
And then you do it next year, you don't want to be part of it, just graduate or something.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful idea.
There's some feedback for you.
Do you want to like break this over 2 meetings? Because there's a lot more sections to go through.
Of course. 3 months
I don't want to, we're getting to 7 o'clock and I don't want to stop the discussion.
I would agree.
We're gonna like rush through the
Not
minutes.
without wine or beer.
On a boat.
So good point. Yeah, I think that's, I would second that.
I don't know if you have, if we can do that.
Yeah, I retract my 4-year comment, now that I realize that it's tied to council. Because I don't remember it switching I don't remember in the past it ending when there was a new council. Like I just kind of went to the next one, but maybe they reappointed, I just know what it was.
So where are we now? Numbers, we were talking about the breakdown of the composition.
So
So we're on number 1.
So we have quite a few slides.
Yeah.
We're on 3 out of like 42.
But the roles responsibilities.
Number 3, yeah.
We were supposed to be on mute, I think, too. That didn't work.
No, we're not mute.
No, that's.
Well, now we're recording, folks, so
So,
we're live.
through the Madam Chair, so I've heard a lot of through the Madam Chair to errors, which I respond to some of them. So first off, absolutely, it is always a possibility for an external body to appoint someone. I've seen that in the museum communities where you might have a historical society appointing members.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to include that, some sort of recommendation of that in my final report. Number 2, definitely, I actually don't know what the background of the youth representative, I can't actually speak to them, I haven't looked into that. I imagine there was some sort of document related to it, but unless we can speak to it, I
It
can't.
happened for me.
It'll be in the minutes of a previous meeting. It was literally just like, hey guys, we should have someone that's like under, I don't know, we didn't say age, but young, on the board, because we're missing like a huge demographic in Norfolk County. And we also, that was identified, you know what, it was around the time where the old economic the old economic strategy plan came out. And that was a
Right.
huge identified thing in there.
Oh,
And we were
you
like,
guys.
well, we're
Youth
missing.
retention, yeah.
We're
youth
missing a
retention.
youth member on this board, so let's get them. I think it was around that time.
So then, and then.
You are correct.
I think so. I'm like,
Youth
remembering.
retention was a priority, yeah.
Then through Madam Chair, to Z's point, with the current meeting, you're right, we have been here for almost 3 hours. I think it's flown by and it's been a great meeting, but understand that there is a lot more discussion to go on. So perhaps we can have a motion to refer this item to our next meeting. And then we can go on to other business, maybe a quick discussion, just perhaps discuss the motion I drafted related to Montrose discussion. And then we close off.
That'd be great.
Okay
That would
with
be
the board?
fantastic, yeah.
So then, first off, perhaps we'll have a motion to refer the rest of the discussion regarding the term record review to the next meeting of the Turbine Economic Development.
Very good. Moved by Michael, seconded by Jerry. All in favor? Aye. Carried. Thanks, Chantal. Excellent.
I will stop sharing my screen. So,
So now we are moving on to correspondence. And we have no correspondence. Number 8, other business. Do we have any other business
Their
to
business
discuss?
would be putting together a subcommittee to start looking at the solution to housing for seasonal workers beyond what is currently permitted to be built in Norfolk County.
Madam Chair, through you, I would have a motion for that.
You did, oh, today. Plan is psychic today. Very good.
The floor is yours.
underwriting and code.
So
So through you, Madam Chair, perhaps the motion will be that a subcommittee be formed to prepare a recommendation regarding solution to
The creation of housing for seasonal workers.
Addressing the lack of housing
Or-
for seasonal workers.
That,
Addressing the lack of.
addressing the lack of housing for seasonal workers. Does it be, yeah, non-agricultural seasonal workers.
excellent. With the following members appointed, one thing I noticed, quorum is 4, so it needs to be under 4 members. Otherwise, it's an official meeting. So the subcommittee can have up to 3.
Okay, so we have
Because
3 volunteers to
Three-
sit on this
Can I,
committee.
is that the question?
Voting members.
from
To be on the
we can
subcommittee,
get-
to be on the subcommittee, do you have to be a member of this board?
No.
So would it be
So you,
a recommendation maybe to invite someone like Brett Schuyler onto that board? Is he already spoken?
Yeah.
Schuler, it's not
Schuler.
I thought you can have more than 3 people as long as it's not members.
yes, so we have 3 voting members of this board, so it's not a committee.
Well, I mean, it's my problem, so I gotta be on the committee.
Okay.
I'll go.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Yeah, we need a third.
Any other time I would, I can't do more meetings right now.
And this is Pam.
I just think, so if she's not on this committee, am I not supposed to talk to her about anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could talk to anybody on the committee.
Yeah.
She could be a resource.
Okay.
I don't think you'll receive my time, but
I
I'll
just don't wanna
probably.
break any rules.
Yes,
I can't be on the committee, but I can be a resource to you.
Yes.
Yeah, so please reach out. So you can identify 2 resources. Yeah.
I'm absolutely a resource.
So, and you and Jerry, you assemble your plan, your
Okay.
meetings, yeah.
So is this issue about bunkhouses used for short-term rentals, or is it a different issue?
It is, it's to house seasonal workers that just aren't agricultural.
Got it.
And Brett said that he would love to do that,
Right.
because on his off season, he can use.
Yeah,
the
his
space.
season
And
is
he talked to me
different
about
from the
short-term
tourism
rentals for
season.
any purpose, right? It
Yeah.
could be for seasonal workers, it could be for tourists, so.
I mean, that's part of, I think, what the subcommittee would be looking into are there reasons why it's problematic to present it as just general short-term rentals? Because obviously there's a whole policy being explored around short-term rentals
Yeah.
in general. This is very specifically more the fact that seasonal workers, they can't sign a lease. Like, people who are willing to sign a year lease can't find an apartment. So if someone's just swooping in, they're competing with all the tourists. So all of a sudden, if a tourist is willing to pay $3,000 a week for a cottage, how is someone that I'm gonna pay, a reasonable wage, but not that much,
Yeah.
how can they compete for housing? So if there is a way to create the same way agricultural, farms can bring in seasonal workers and house them on their properties.
Right.
I have agricultural property. I'd be willing to build the nicest bunkhouse known to man to house my seasonal workers in the summer to staff my hotel, but I can't because they're hotel workers, they're not farm workers.
Got it. Okay,
So-
that makes sense.
So I'm thinking you're gonna move this motion forward, correct?
So
Sure.
Yeah, and this will be, who's gonna second that?
I was like,
Okay, seconded by Michelle, all in favor? Carried? No opposition, that's great, we have our ad hoc committee.
awesome.
There you go, do you feel now?
You
You have been heard. Do you feel better now, do you feel different? You had mentioned your experience last
Well, I mean,
meeting.
you guys are stuck in the room with me,
Process.
so you have to hear me. I'm waiting until the people outside the room hear.
No, but there's a process. Ms. Carey,
Madam Chair, has the chair of this committee been established?
the chair of this committee.
Oh,
Of this
Subcommittee?
Because
No,
that's my
do you
question is,
need a
now that we-
subcommittee
now that we declare
chair?
the party that we have a committee, someone's got to drive the vote.
Okay.
So is that something that the committee decides offsite, are you gonna do that, or are you gonna do it now?
So Madam Chair. Please
Go ahead.
So ordinarily, in my experience, the subcommittee itself will pick its own chair, just like how this board picks its own chair. Also to note, although we are absolutely have to write support, ultimately, we are only directed to provide support to this board itself.
Yeah.
So as such, we can provide some background, but ultimately will be in the hands of the 2 members to lead the subcommittee. And not that we can't respond to an email here and there, but for example, we will not be there to take minutes or to, you know, provide sort of professional background. And I'm asking you to do prepare some sort of rough notes, just some updates that you bring forward for ratification.
Yeah, it's a bit organic, even with the grant.
Yeah.
But they
committee,
can
right?
invite staff, right?
I
They
think
can
it's
invite like planning, hey, how should we do
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So through you,
Sure.
Madam Chair,
And then Helene.
to Helene, I would love to recommend exactly what was just said, making sure that at least someone from planning, if they can't attend, they at least provide some background on why that doesn't exist already and the issues that they have seen, or if they have, basically just a request for advice, whether it's attendance or an email, on what investigation they've done so far and why it's not happening.
Yes.
Madam Chair, good point. If you don't ask, you don't get. It's all about communication. So if that history, from the historical perspective of what you're looking for, I would strongly recommend that when this committee forms, the committees get formed and they get forgotten about. So by next meeting, there's going to be a report back. By that point, we're going to have a report who's shared what your game plan is. And it could be, these are the questions that this committee has is to get. I'm sure staff member will be happy, not happy, but they'll be okay to do this, but to say what's going on, I mean, lots, and then another month goes by, and another month goes by. So the more specific you are with what you're looking for, you want that information, I would recommend, and I suggest it's incumbent on you all, on that committee, to be very specific in your request, so it's very easy for them to acquiesce. Absolutely. The more ambiguity, it just, I'm living this right now, folks, and so
Yeah.
I'm coming to it from a place of honesty. The more specific you are, the specific deadline, you get it. But if
And the
you-
existing bylaws are out there,
Yeah.
so you can just,
And it's
you
not
can
being-
get that online, it's
Yeah.
public, yeah.
So that's what I would sort of recommend.
Yeah, Elaine?
So coming from the corporate world, I mean, I've run lots of groups to get things accomplished and everything like that, but there are way less rules as to how you're supposed to do that in that world. So is there any resource that someone can provide me or us to know what all the, the fact that it has to have an official chair and that, are we expected to provide minutes or transcripts or, I don't
Have
know.
to be at enough building.
Exactly, is there a minimum amount of time that we have to meet, or I feel like there's a lot of rules around everything relating to anything here, and so I'm happy to follow all of them, but I need to know what they are.
This is a non-mandated committee.
Yeah.
So I don't know if formula needs to be, I think,
No.
Gareth looking into the data.
I thought it was just, he just like went tick, 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 tick.
So the trick back to the agent clerk is not knowing all the.
Just meet when you can, right, on the patio, the two of you drive the bus, reach out to the resources,
Yeah.
Brett, Michelle,
Can we get
Wanda.
Brett's contact information?
I got his
Okay.
contact last,
Okay.
I can send it.
And-
Yeah,
And then your resource, and then you can pick a couple of people from, a couple of businesses from Port Dover that are in the same boat, that are, you can walk down any street in Norfolk and see that there's help wanted signs, and you can just tick, 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 help. They want help.
Oh, no, that I understand. I just wanted to make sure that there
Yeah.
weren't some very specific rules that
Yeah.
we were supposed to follow, and for, that,
Yeah.
we have to assign a chair. I didn't know that. I didn't think we had to pick a boss.
Someone has to.
Or,
Yes.
we have to write,
I think it's logical for the expeditiousness of getting this moving forward, but I think there's a lot that we can do, like even SWOT analysis.
Oh, absolutely.
We need some people to gather that data from.
you're a good team, Michelle, and
Just
then
really
we have Aaron, and then we're gonna go back to this agenda because people are making the voting.
Just very quickly, because this is an issue that and this is just for the rules and regulations around stuff, because this is an issue you brought forth because it's personal experience, where do we, what kind of guidance do we need on when it's pecuniary interest?
Yeah.
I guess, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
that's, that could easily be an issue, right? If you're the chair of this committee, you're bringing all this information and it's very specific to, what kind of guidelines can you help us with that? Because I do always I question little things like that. I mean, I know.
Erin has provided us with that with the Year of the Garden, right? I came across a national opportunity. I removed myself. I brought it here and said, hey, we're doing it. Doesn't cost you a dime. You can connect with a national initiative. Hey, we're Ontario's garden. Wouldn't it be crazy if we walked away from this, right? Win-win. And so we walked through that process. So, I mean, because it's on your radar, you can remove yourself from a recommendation of the vote. You were at the table. These are the other people who, it's those resources. It's not about you. Yeah, you discovered it because you are the boots on the ground. Yeah, but
just to make, where's
it's a broader issue, and that is going to be the dialogue and the.
So note to self, I can hear it and push it forward, but I shouldn't be voting in whether
You won't.
the rest of the committee decides it's worth putting forward.
Yeah, and Erin might have you leave the meeting momentarily for that discussion and meetings.
Okay.
That vote.
We can work outside the window looking.
You can hear me and give us the evil eye. Right on. Erin?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is really covered by the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So under the act, staff cannot actually tell board members or council members if they have a conflict of interest. That's up to themselves. I'm happy to talk about that. But again, it's really about financial interest. And if you feel you have a conflict of interest, you can bring forward at the actual board meeting, and we can remove you from the meeting and take those necessary steps. But for fact-finding missions, I know there's some issues with that, but if it's again, I can't speak to any specific situation. That'd be inappropriate.
The care and caution that these conversations represent is admirable. So thank you for bringing this up, and because these are good points, right? If it's a new process, it just shows how much you respect the process, and as we all do. So we're good.
And if I can add that through Madam Chair, is also in terms of the formality.
Yeah.
Think of it, subcommittee sounds very formal, and that's where the terminology, the term reference used. But think of it more like a review group. As long as you're not meeting with more than 4 members, which is quorum, that's going to be no problem. But you're welcome to meet with various members, individually discuss this, research this. But don't forget, ultimately, if the board will make the recommendation, you're just sort of doing that background knowledge and background research. And in terms of preparing documents, I recommend keeping draft notes saying, I met with Jerry on Thursday, this will be discussed. Bring that forward to me on this agenda, and hopefully this doesn't take too long, right? We're coming to the end of our term. So maybe in July, you can bring forward both your very brief notes and also a fairly good draft of your motion. What are you two going to recommend to the board to actually ratify? And at that point, maybe there's a conflict of interest, maybe we need to modify that motion, or we can sort of do that. But think of it more as just a group who are going to work on a motion together and bring it forward.
So is it too much pressure that, because I know we'll have our pre-consult meeting, for us to, I've made a note here that maybe we would like an update at the July meeting? So you'll have, regarding this
5
matter.
days beforehand, when do you guys meet for your pre-consult meeting?
Well, we'll put it on
Or
the
just-
agenda and just
okay,
see if you have an update, where you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you don't, you don't, but you might.
To anything specific, so sure.
No, you don't have to have the completion of it, but you could talk about, we're building the framework of data collection, right? And the few steps. I mean, this doesn't happen overnight, but we want to make sure you're on the agenda, and it remains visible within the correspondence that is circulated not only to this committee, but also to council. So I'm going to make that note if you're both good with that.
Because I'm actually away all of August.
Okay. Well, we'll do that with the two of you.
Yeah, it's like
In the framework.
All you have to do is meet with planning, probably have building there, say, is this viable? Is there being done here? If it's not viable, why not? What are the things that would prevent us? And if the answers aren't great, then just say, okay, what are the things that we could do, or that council could do, or the municipality could do, that would get this going? And then that would be the basis of your motion. Whether something's happening, if it's not, why not? What could happen, and what do you need to ask from council?
Okay. Yeah, all the tools are available for us to bring change forward. and the conversation, so. Excellent, we have a motion, so, and it's
Madam
carried.
Chair,
Yes, Chris?
thank you. And just to add to Zvi's recommendation there, one of the things that the subcommittee could do is to look at other municipalities, see whether or not that is possible, or they were able to make that a possibility, and have those examples of other municipalities where that is possible.
Good point.
Excellent.
How do we get that information?
That's why you do what you do, Chris.
You could either reach out to other municipalities directly.
Excellent
you could-
recommendation.
Staff might have an idea when you meet with planning. They might know about municipalities, whether they've seen others doing it or not.
Think of a similar municipality that's rural but has a.
Yeah, I'd be looking at their bylaws too.
Yeah, excellent. Any further discussion on this, folks? Seeing none, we have our motion there, so we're moving over to item number 9, Planning Advisory Committee business, which there is no business at this meeting. Item number 10, closed session, no items to report. Next meeting, it looks like we have a meeting that will be on site at Cranberry Creek.
Well, I looked at my calendar and I found the date
Okay.
because I am personally gone. Wait, I'm not. We usually do this, what week of the
So Madam Chair, the memo that was ratified a few months ago,
Yeah.
the board meetings, our next one is scheduled for July 20th.
That's the only Wednesday that works.
So, I
You
mean,
guys can discuss, I don't know if it's an option.
in
yet.
terms of the actual location,
Yeah.
I can send a communication about that after. I just get direction from my director, but
Yeah.
July 20th is the next meeting.
Okay, next meeting, and we'll wait for approvals and clarification to see if that can be at offsite. That's great. Seeing none. Now, we are looking for a mover and a seconder to adjourn this very productive meeting. We have Michael, seconded by Chantel. All in favor? Carried, and the time is 7:15 p.m. So thank you all.
Given the election, is the July meeting the last one? But is that the last